Everyone, welcome to this crowdcast on Smartcat Academy. I'm Vova, head of community at Smartcat. Today with me is once again Una Dimitrievich. Hi Una.
Hello.
How are
Hi,
you?
Vova.
I'm glad your hardware is working great now and crowdcast too.
Yep, sorry about it last time. I think now we figured out that we need about 3 backup options when something goes wrong. So
without further words, today we will be talking about translation agencies and job aggregators. Una has got a presentation for you, and then we will also discuss the questions and maybe anything that pops up. So Una, I'm giving the mic to you, and let us know what we are going to talk about today.
yeah, sure. So just to introduce myself a little bit, because I know that in the polls we also check to see if everybody knows who I am, and I think a few of you have already seen my webinars, but not everybody has. So just to give you a little bit of background, I'm essentially a French to English translator, although I also work with Serbo-Croat and with Italian into English, and I also do obviously few other things like proofreading and subtitling. And I got in touch with Smartcat because I wanted to start doing a series of webinars to help new translators and translators who are just starting out and people who are thinking about joining this profession, to give them advice, to provide them with the kind of help that I wish I'd had when I was just starting out. And I wanted to help create the community, which I think Smartcat is really doing, to provide resources and to also learn from other people who are part of this community. So I really enjoy doing these webinars. I enjoy helping people build their business and overcome the initial challenges they have. So because of that, I've added personal coaching as well to this job description of mine. So you can have links that I sent, in the link that I sent you, you've got other links to the previous webinars if you haven't seen them. They'll be really useful to you before you watch this one to give you added information as well. So this is, I think, the 6th in a series of the webinars we're doing, and it's the whole idea of them was to create a series of webinars to help people get set up in their translation business as fast as possible. So it was called Fully Booked in 6 months, and that's still the idea that we're trying to follow. We're trying to help people to get set up as quickly as possible. So yeah, and today we're going to talk about agencies and aggregators. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, I will focus on the presentation then, right?
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we're all ears and eyes.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start with this. So basically with this presentation, what we want to go into is talk about some options that you have once you've already set up your business to start off with. Once you've got your CV and your website and you've got a few references, you want to start developing your client base. And some of the options that are out there are agencies and job aggregators. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. What we want to talk about is what's likely to be the most fruitful for you. And often that's going to be whatever you invest most of your time in. That's something really to bear in mind. But in essence, at the start of your career, you never know where your jobs are going to come from. So it's important to just keep an open mind in your approach and to also respond according to each potential client and according to each response that you get. So it's just a general sort of introduction, some general ideas that I wanted to bring across. And next webinar we want to talk about direct clients, but we decided to do a separate one just for agencies and job aggregators, since I think there's a lot to be said. So we're going to start off by talking about agencies, and you'll have a lot of varied comments regarding agencies. Some translators you'll find really hate working with them, and others actually find that it's easier to work with agencies because you don't have that direct client relation. But in any case, you need to bear in mind that there are agencies and agencies, just like there are translators who are really professional translators, and there are translators who are looking to just make a quick buck online. So it's important to be able to differentiate between them. And the first point here that I wanted to mention was just the difference in the size of the agencies. Some are very large, they're well known, they're highly sensitive to their image, they're very reliable agencies, they're good payers, and they're good communicators. But what you'll find is that others are facing financial bankruptcy, they're constantly changing their names, they're unreliable, and they're unpleasant to deal with. Some of them are just out there as scammers. And when you deal with agencies, you need to also understand how they behave, because they have different processes. Very large agencies, you'll find that your first contact is actually going to be with a vendor management person. They do basically all the administrative stuff for their company. And later on, you're going to meet project managers who you're going to work with directly the most often. And these large agencies will also have a separate delivery department that you will send your work to, who deal with the proofreading and with any additional information from the client, and you'll have a separate accounting department. But with very small agencies, you'll find that you often just have one manager who sort of does all of the above. And the advantage of very large agencies is often their reputation and their financial resources. So large agencies are probably more likely to pay you regardless of whether the client pays them, although that's not necessarily a given. And small agencies, on the other hand, they'll probably feel a bit more intimate. They'll have a smaller database of translators that they can call upon more often. And let me just see what Bo was saying. Oh, no, don't worry about it. I'm on the translation. I just wanted to make a point about large and small agencies to start off with, so don't worry. Okay, so yes, make friends with the project managers is the last point I wanted to say, regardless of the types of agencies you're working with, because the project managers are the ones in the end who choose the translators. But beyond this, you need to look at the reputation of the agencies. You need to vet them. And so this is the second point, which is use online services like payment practices, the Post Blues board. Some of them are paying, but I actually subscribed to payment practices for the first few years of my business, and I found that it was a worthwhile investment, probably the only thing I subscribed to initially, because you will get information about how reliable companies are. And there are LinkedIn groups as well. There's one, I think it's called Unacceptable Translation, and these groups can also give you information. You can ask people, have you worked with this agency? I'm not sure about them. You can get useful information about agencies through these kinds of groups, and Translators Cafe on their website as well. So to be honest, I really avoid working with any translation agency that gets low ratings from other translators regarding, for example, their payment, whether they pay in time, whether they pay in full. And I would advise you to do the same. And then also apply common sense when you're reading translation job offers, as you would do in everyday life. So for example, if something looks a bit strange, or maybe it looks too good to be true, then it probably is. So for example, how do they express themselves? Sometimes these are just funny. Sometimes I recently saw an ad from an agency. I don't know if it came into my inbox or if I just saw it on the Translators Cafe, but this was their announcement. This is how they presented themselves when they were looking for translators to work with. So, we're based in Florida, USA. A new client came to us lately with a large project. Mostly be legal documents we translated from French into American English. We would like to know your best rate in US dollars. You want translators in legal matters, etc., etc.
I love the way you're pronouncing all this. I can almost hear them saying this.
By the way, it's a 180-page job. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know if they have like a full stop key that's broken, or I don't know if everyone in Florida is super happy all the time. I'm not sure, but the way this agency communicates, it just comes across as very unprofessional. And so for me, that says that, well, I'm not really likely to respond to them or look at working with them. And the same goes for visual communication. So, you know, if they have a website that looks like it's made in 1998, then that's probably something that I would avoid. Let me see. Wanted to give you the visual of this. My PowerPoint went a bit slow. There you go. Translation agencies whose website looks like it was made in 1998. Avoid those as well. So what should serious agencies be doing? Well, aside from being good communicators, I think what an agency a good one, should be doing is searching for translators as well who have the relevant sector knowledge and experience, and they should be vetting translators. So I would be worried if a new agency came to me with a job straight away and didn't check my background, didn't check my credentials, or if they offered me a job in a field that I was absolutely not competent in. So it's tempting, I know, to accept any job that you're offered when you're just starting out, but it can actually often lead to working with very unreliable and even non-paying agencies. So really be warned about this. And serious agencies, they should also really be providing you essential information about a job from the very start. They should at least be telling you what kind of document you're going to be translating, how long it is, and when the deadline is. And furthermore, they should be happy to give you any additional information that can help you and to help you get clarification from the client if you have any questions and any doubts. And the last point, this is following quite a bad experience I had, is about invoicing and payment practices. They should be very clear about this, about how they intend to pay you and by what time. I once had an agency who I think was going to pay me by PayPal and then just kept being late. And essentially at the end, they sent me money through MoneyGram. It's like a sort of cash wiring service. I had to go to an office in town. It was just ridiculous. And it's, you know, an agency I'm never going to work with again because of that. So if in doubt, you want to not accept very large projects if you have any doubts about an agency, or insist on being paid in 2 or 3 sections before you send in the whole translation. And a reliable agency will be quite happy to allow you to do this because they'll understand where you're coming from at all. Of course, if you have bad experiences with agencies, please do let the online community know, because this is how we can really help each other and support each other. So let's just go over the general pros and cons of working through translation agencies. First of all, the great thing is that they're doing the client outreach, so you don't have to. You don't have to do all the client research and the marketing. And you also may get to work with really large clients that you wouldn't have been able to contact yourself because you won't have necessarily the right contacts, the right network to be able to reach out to them. Certainly the case for me, I've worked with many large energy companies because I got the jobs through translation agencies. And they'll have constant inflow of work from various clients. So what's important is that you just nurture a good relationship with the project managers, and that will ensure that you keep getting called up, keep getting work from them. And translation agencies, of course, understand what your job is and what it entails. So you don't need to be explaining CAT tools to them. You don't need to be justifying the time that it takes you to translate something, because this is their industry area as well. And with reputable agencies, the great thing is that even if the client doesn't pay them, they will pay you, which obviously you don't have that when you're working with direct clients. On the cons side of things, however, you do have less contact with clients, so it can be more complicated to actually get answers to your questions. You're often going through maybe 1 or 2 intermediary persons, and the agencies will of course take a share of the earnings. You'll end up earning less per word than if you were working with a direct client. And you may find, I often do, that they're less flexible about deadlines and rates than your direct clients usually are. So you can feel sort of a bit less in control of this aspect of your work. And they're less likely to negotiate because they're going to have lots of translators to work with, lots of other people to reach out to, unlike some of your direct clients. And finally, what you'll find is that agencies will ask you to sign non-disclosure agreements. So this often results in you not being allowed to work with their direct clients for the next 2 years on your own as like a direct supplier. So you have to be aware of that. Now, if this hasn't put you off, and if you still want to try contacting agencies nonetheless, then these would be some of the advice that I would give. So first of all, make a battle plan. What do I mean by this? I mean contact lots of agencies, because you need to be aware that out of all the agencies that you reach out to, maybe 10% will get back to you, but only about 1% will actually end up sending you work. So to give you an illustration, I mean, when I started out the first few months, I made a list of about 1,400 agencies. And I was vetting them, and I found that about 900 of those actually existed, were relevant to what I wanted, my language combinations, etc. And those are the agencies that I contacted. Out of those 900 odd agencies, I got 120 positive replies. And out of those, I've worked with about 15 thus far. So it's, you know, it's a lot of work, this initial work, but I wouldn't advise you to buy pre-existing lists that exist online. They're often very unreliable and very overpriced. Use rather the directories of agencies that exist on places like Translators Cafe or Payment Practices to select the agencies that are relevant for you and to start making your own lists. And when you do start making lists, obviously focus also in the countries that use your languages, and that's going to be able to help you filter down the agencies, and target agencies according to your areas of specialization if you have them. And so what you want to do is essentially start making a database. I simply just made an Excel sheet listing the translation agencies, the name, the country, the specialization, contact information, and then any requirements. So if they ask you to send your CV in Word or in PDF, if they ask you to do an online test, make sure you note this down and that you contact them in the way that they want to be contacted. And also you can sign up to receive information from job notifications from places like Translators Cafe and also Smartcat, and we'll talk about that just a little later on in this webinar. And when they obviously keep updating this list when the agency responds, and you can start making a schedule for yourself to send out CVs or to do online applications. So when you know that you've got to contact a whole lot of agencies, you want to set yourself a schedule of maybe doing 10 or 20 per day. And then, of course, once you start hearing back from them, you want to separate any positive replies into new lists so that you're keeping track of that, and then follow through when you get a reply from them, however they ask you to, or just simply by saying thank you, and just make sure you respond. And note down the contact dates that they reach out to you at, and also the status. I mean, I just call it the status, for example, CV received, or online test to be completed, or in their database, whatever information you need to know what your contact is with that agency. And also note down, of course, any rates that you've discussed with them, so that next time they get in touch with you, you can quickly see what rates they're applying and also how long it's been since they contacted you last time. If you're very visual, you can even use a sort of color coordinated system to do this. And then you want to preset another schedule to resend CV updates. So if an agency gets back to you and says, you know, thanks, yes, we'd like to work with you, but doesn't actually send you any jobs after that, maybe 4 to 6 months later, you can send them a new email with an updated CV, just kind of remind them that you exist. And if they don't reply to you at all, you get no response from the email that you sent out, then maybe 1 or 2 months later, you want to just simply try again. They get a whole lot of applications, so sometimes it's just a question of being persistent. If you are asked to do test translation, I know some translators really refuse to do this, but I think when you're starting out, it's important to give yourself every opportunity. And I certainly did a bunch of test translations. If you do them well. Treat them like it's a real job, but also don't accept pages of test translation. You shouldn't be doing more than about 300 words and a maximum for a test translation. And the last point here is don't accept work that you don't feel comfortable doing. And this, again, I know it can be hard at the beginning because you're tempted to take just about any job being offered, but you will find that it's counterproductive in the long term. It may really negatively impact your relationship with the agency if you don't have a specialization in the field that you're doing a translation in and you're not providing good work. Okay, so just to sum up, once you approach the agency, working with them, what are the general do's and don'ts? What would I just kind of, to give you general information about working with agencies? Be reactive and responsive. I mean, the amount of project managers that say to me how important that is to them, just people who are responsive and who are pleasant. You need to consider the position of the project managers. They're people who typically often have a high stress job. It's not that great pay. They're juggling lots of projects and clients and translators. And so it's important to them to have just kind of a pleasant relationship with you. Bear in mind that they are the ones that choose the translators. So they'll remember how you dealt with, even an unpleasant situation. And don't deliver late. That's also something very important to translation for agencies. You need to plan the extra time for research maybe that you need to do. You always need to give yourself an extra 1 or 2 hours in what you really think you need for a translation. You mustn't forget that you're a part of a team when you're working with an agency. There's lots of work that comes before you and after you. So don't make assumptions. Ask for clarification if you think there's something that doesn't make sense, if you're unsure about the text. If you even think there's mistakes in the source text, there really often is. Often people are giving you texts that don't make sense, or that have just the wrong word put in or anything like that. And project managers are going to appreciate the scrutiny that you're giving to the text. Follow their instructions closely. This is really important if you want to be considered for complex jobs. So if a project manager comes to you and says, okay, in the project order, there'll be something like, only translate the columns in green, or please use this vocabulary list, or make sure that the final document is, right aligned, or something like that. You need to make sure that you're actually following these instructions, giving them less work. And update them with news about your career progress. Let them know what you're up to if you haven't heard from them in a while, because it's just going to jog their memory and make sure that they remember that you're out there and hopefully reach out to you for another job. And don't accept just any rate that they offer. However, make sure that you can explain why you're worth the rate that you're asking if they question it. So whether it's your degrees, whether you have a really good specialization in the field, or really a lot of experience with something, you do need to kind of say, I'm worth this rate. And also think that most agencies do have a cap for each language pair. They need to ensure their margin. So you can, try and find that out. At some point, the agency, the project manager, is going to have to say no, because they're trying to ensure their margin as well. So if you do reject a job because for example, the pay isn't good, or because you think that it's not really your area of specialization, that's perfectly okay. Just be polite about it, and they'll come back to you with another job that fits your profile. They would rather that you reject something that you're not happy with than just take anything you're offered and provide a subpar work. Just make sure that the rate that you're accepting, it fits your financial goals, whatever you need to earn to get by, and to even successfully work as a freelance translator, not just to get by. And don't put all your eggs in one basket. So be in contact with lots of people, lots of agencies, because the more offers that you get, even if you have to refuse them, the more choice you're going to have in the type of work you do, the happier you're going to be doing the work that you are given. At this point, before we jump over to job aggregators, Vova, is there anything that, I know you don't really work with agencies, but is there anything you want to mention, or certainly anything that people have mentioned in the discussions whilst I've been talking that you think is worth mentioning?
Yeah, I don't have actually anything to say myself. I think we can keep us here. I think there was an interesting discussion with Paz, who said that you must make sure that they have some valid contacts, not only a website and email, to which I actually said that I'm not pretty sure that every reliable agency will have a physical address and an email. For instance, when I work as an agency, I don't. So I think it depends on the size of the agency. Of course, if they claim to be a large agency, they probably need to have those. Yeah. And there was also an interesting discussion about how much agencies pay to their. Let us switch us back on screen. A discussion about how much agencies pay to their translators and how much they leave to themselves. I watched a presentation by our COO a while ago, And it says that for a pretty large agency, they pay 40% to a freelancer. At the same time, they only have a margin of 15%. So the rest is some kind of administrative costs, be it vendor management costs, project management costs, and so on. But Pavel here says that it's unbelievable. So, but, well, what I hear that I tell. So, and also Cherry Place, hi Cherry, said that in her case, because Cherry has a boutique agency, they pay to translators 50-60% and 25 to 30% to revisers, which I think leaves exactly like something like 15% to themselves, but there are all these other costs that are usually involved for a big agency. So.
Yeah. Just work with your rates that you're comfortable with, and that's it, says Igor. Yeah, I think it's generally, it's hard to know how other people are doing their accounting, but that's the important thing, is just to be happy with what you're earning. You know, if you're really frustrated with what you're earning, then you need to rethink your method. And for those who are interested in talking more about rates, we can give you the link, but there's a past webinar that we did that was really about setting your own rates and how to do that to kind of feel comfortable in the end with what you're charging. Yeah.
So basically, I think that's it. Some people are having problems connecting. Sorry, you can watch it in replay later, but you cannot hear me anyway. So
yeah, you can let them know in the chat maybe to try Chrome. I know that's the one that seems to work.
People are comforting them. Thanks, Pasyan, and thanks, Ottavio.
Yeah, it's a shame. Hopefully we'll be able to watch in a replay, and we'll have the forum, of course, the Smartcat forum that we can keep discussing.
Yeah, by the way, guys, we have this discussion tab on the left where you can get into more detailed discussions about what you want to discuss here than the chat, because the chat will be gone after the webinar and the forum will stay. So feel free to sign up and jot a few lines what you think, and we'll come back to this, everyone. So I think we can go to the next topic, the aggregators and
Great, yeah. And Igor, yes, I will share the presentation. I'll send
same topic. I think I will upload it.
Yeah, the slides will be uploaded. You'll be able to get them. Okay.
So
perfect.
I'm getting us out of the screen again.
Okay, part 2, online job aggregators. So this is quite a large topic in one sense. You'll find that agencies themselves use job aggregator sites frequently as well to search for translators. But I get the sense that at least the largest agencies rely mostly on their own translator databases. And these job aggregators, they may be specific to translation or they may not, but the concept is largely similar. So first, on these aggregator sites, you have it's a site where you can create your own profile for clients to also find you, give information about yourself. When you do this, if you want to do this, be specific and try and think of it from the client's perspective, from their search terms, from what they're looking for. And you can also receive emails from these job aggregator sites that give you, this link to all the different jobs that are being posted in your language combinations, for example. So you can reply to those ads, or you can simply browse the different ads that are coming in, and you're, in that case, bidding for jobs. So let's take a look at this sort of what exists out there. Obviously, I'm not mentioning all of them because there's a whole lot, but just to go over some main ones, here in the general freelancing category, so this is freelancers from all spheres, designers, web programmers, whatever you want. There's Upwork. I think it's probably the largest in terms of just how many freelancers and clients are on there. And they have apparently a good payment protection plan for both clients and for translators, which is an advantage of Upwork. However, they do also have a fee structure that means that they keep 10% of your earnings for every job, the jobs that are created through Upwork. Guru, they have a system whereby they work with the top 3% of freelancers, that's what they say. So you pass a sort of interview and you do test and you can become a proper Guru translator. And that's the sort of hard part. What's good about it then is that because you're in this sort of elite 3% of freelance translators, You don't have to deal with clients that are just looking for the lowest bid. You're dealing with probably slightly better type of workflow, and you only paid, however, once the client has approved the work that you send in. And of course, you can also use it to search for jobs that are being posted. A slightly different structure is people per hour. So they're a freelance website where you hire people and you pay them on an hourly basis or a per project price. So as a freelancer, you list your services and you set a fixed amount for, or like a price per hour for the services that you offer. So you'll find that, for example, translation services on people per hour, they're starting at something like about $15 US for 500 words, and I've seen about $500 US to translate a full website. So it's certainly something you can consider. You're not losing anything by putting up your profile, putting your information on there. People can come and contact you. Freelancer, again, similar to the first aggregators I mentioned, you bid for different types of jobs on there. People say, you know, how much they kind of want to pay for something. And in terms of language-related jobs, there are very varied things on offer. So, for example, I had a look at what was going on a few days ago, and people, for example, ask you, I will pay 25 euros for somebody to talk with an electrician on the phone for me because I don't speak French, and you know, I need to get my electricity sorted. So you actually might find kind of interesting jobs that are out there that you wouldn't have thought of if you're looking to work in the language services provider sphere in general. And then you do have, of course, translator-specific job aggregators, and probably the best well-known, the kind of most, the longest-standing are Translators Cafe and Proz. So I get email alerts from Translators Cafe whenever there are jobs that respond to my criteria. And what's interesting about their job notices is that you can see how many other translators have looked at the job, how many other translators have bid for the job. And it also simply allows you to find out about potential future clients, new agencies that are out there. Even if you're not intending to reply to that particular job offer, you can simply add their information to your database and then contact them at a later time. And Proz, what I quite like is that you can set your job criteria, and then you have that information on your homepage every time you open it. You have the job list that's on there. And the disadvantage about the way they work is that if you're not paying member, then you have to wait 24 hours to be able to answer a job posting. So paying members have priority. And then you'll find a bunch of other things that exist out there. Translators Town is an example. I've kind of logged onto them and tried to see what they were about. And they have a strange system. For example, on Translators Town, you have to basically, you can't, with the free version, bid on jobs. So you get information in your inbox about what jobs are available, what kind of things clients are looking for. They can even, you know, find your profile and invite you to bid on their job, but you need to be a paying member, and I think it's $75 a year in order to respond and to actually bid for jobs. So I would be very wary of systems like this. And last time I checked, there were relatively few postings in major language fairs. So I'm personally very skeptical of this kind of model where you have to actually pay to bid on jobs. It's not something I would advise. What's recently come on the market is the Smartcat job aggregator, and it sources jobs from 3 different sources from here: Upwork, Freelancer, and Proz. And also recently, I think Boba can come and chat to you about this, it's aggregating the jobs that are being posted on Smartcat too. So maybe Boba, if you want to come and tell them a little bit about more. I know it's a new service, it's just getting started, but I think it's a really interesting one.
Okay, let me then unfocus the screen. Maybe I'll show us for a while, or maybe I'll share my own screen. It's actually not that a new service, but it was some kind of, I don't know what's the right metaphor for this in English. a wrong child in the family or something like this. Let me focus on it, because it was just there, and basically you can see the link in the address line here on the shared screen. It basically collects jobs from 3 freelancing platforms, from Pros, from Upwork, and from freelance.com, I think so. And the reason I didn't usually tell about it is that it creates a confusion among our users, because some of them start thinking that, hey, Smartcat is just another job aggregator. So no, it's just a list of jobs parsed from other sites. It's quite useful, by the way. You can quickly sort it, not sort, but filter it by languages like this. Quite smart, actually. But until recently, it was only like this. There is also a very small percentage of jobs that are posted on Smartcat. I will now show you how many of them there are right now. There is also one job that is from Finnish to Russian. So how did they usually end up being there? For instance, we have a rare language pair like Finnish to Russian, and some customer wants translators in this pair, and they can't find one, so they contact our project management team, and then we send out some kind of tests, some kind of mailings to guys in our database, and even sometimes outside it, and we post this here just to try it out. We actually have some people subscribe to this list. You can see that you can subscribe here for the jobs you want to follow, for the languages, and how often you want to follow them. Actually, it's pretty useful. But the reason I want to talk now is that with the next release of Smartcat, which comes out, I think, next week or one after this, customers on Smartcat will be able to click a checkbox when they create a project that will say, publish a job vacancy, something like this. So in case you didn't know, usually Smartcat doesn't work like this. Usually Smartcat works like this. Let me show it in real life. It might take a bit of time, but bear with me, I think not too much. Usually the freelancers on Smartcat have their own profile, and they fill it up, and customers look for them. By the way, there was a question in the list of questions, how can I start getting orders on Smartcat? So usually all you have to do to start getting orders is actually start translating on your own jobs. So you will be translating more words, and you will be getting higher in the search results. I will not stop on this right now, because it will take a lot of time. I will just show how this marketplace looks like. So usually the customer has to look for freelancers. So for instance, here we have English to French, and you can see this list. So the customer looks at the rates, looks at the profiles, at the test paths, and so on and so forth, on the feedback, number of words translated, and they invite these freelancers to their projects. But now with this new feature, customers will be able to tick a checkbox, and their vacancy will be published here. So now I want to introduce this job aggregator to you as well. I think it will be nifty to use it, both to get jobs from other sites, or if you wish, you can click a checkbox here and only see jobs coming from Smartcat. In either case, it will be more handy to use it than to browse through all the sites. If you see some of the jobs here, you can see that they're the kind of jobs that Una talked about that you should not pay attention to. Yeah, this happens. So you should be wary. One thing that differs for the Smartcat job aggregator is that in the general case, all jobs are vetted by our project management team. So if a customer clicks a checkbox, then first our project management team looks what customer it is and whether it is a legit job. Basically, it involves, I will now, I think, pop back to us. Usually it doesn't involve more than this sanity check that Uno talked about. So they just get in touch with it and make some very basic screening. So you cannot really say that, okay, if it was vetted by Smartcat, that there is no way it could not be a scammer. Everything can happen. On the other side, through all our 2 or 3 years of existence, there were no real scammers on Smartcat. I mean that there were some different cases of delays and so on, but in general, all jobs were paid, and we do not have such issues with scammers. So basically that's it. I don't know if there were some questions asked in the meantime in the chat.
Nope.
Not about this, but I think there was a question. By the way, we will need to look through the questions in the Q&A section as well. I saw one here that Marcel was asking, do you think it makes sense to become a paying member at job aggregators like freelancers and others? So what do you think, Una?
Yeah, I'm just about to get onto that actually, to talk to you a little bit about how you can use these aggregators.
Okay, so then I'm giving, so you are proceeding with your presentation then, right?
Yeah,
right?
let's get back to it and then we'll come back and
okay,
answer more questions at the end. Okay, perfect. So, yeah, I think that what you were talking about, the Smartcat aggregator, I really like this feature of having the amount of words translated come up, because I'm enjoying using the Smartcat software rather for translating. And what I think that with all of these sites that you want to be resourceful. So what's good about this aggregator that Smartcat has is that you can see information from 3 other big sites. So it's of course a way to just simply have all the information in one place. And if you realize at some point that you're spending just too much time reading through job offers on any of these sites and you're bidding and you're not getting anything back, then this may not be the right approach for you, simply because maybe you need to earn more than what they're willing to pay through these kinds of sites. You need to just figure out if it's worth it for you, and whether you want to lower your prices just when you're starting out to begin getting a few clients and getting a few, bit of experience. And it's understandable to do that, but then you mustn't let that kind of situation last. If you do need to earn a certain amount because of where you live, then you need to earn that amount. So just to summarize, to give you an idea about the pros and cons of these aggregators, but also of how I've used them. So I basically joined or put my profile on a lot of these aggregator sites to increase my online presence, because what you can do is add your website to each profile that you put out there, and that improves your Google reference. It improves because the more places that your website is referenced online, the more visible you are, the better, the more likely you are to be found. So this is why I joined these different aggregators in the first place. And they're also a place that obviously you're increasing your chances of clients finding you, because your profile is out there and you're not losing anything from it. And you can also, as I mentioned, receive automatic emails to see all the different job offers that are out there, just simply to browse, to have an idea of what's going on, what the prices are, who's looking for professionals in your area. On the con side, you do need to realize that you have to invest time to see the results. So if you don't update your profile and if you don't use the site regularly, you're simply unlikely to get noticed. So you need to, for example, upload recent projects, new information to get something back. And I think, like I said, Smartcat's interesting because they offer you lots of choices on how to do this, and even simply just by translating, you've got words that you're accumulating that also builds up your profile. And the more, the better your profile is, the more likely you are to get jobs because you simply appear more experienced. And the other con is that you may have fees and different levels of membership for these sites. So this is what somebody mentioned typically about Prosy, of course, where you get privileged access to jobs if you're a member. So you have to sort of figure out whether this is the right thing for you. I would suggest, first of all, joining these different sites on the free basis, just to see how they work, just to see if you like them, what kind of jobs are out there, and then make a decision about whether you want to invest. And the cons, again, third con is that you do have to, as I mentioned, sort through a lot of this junk. It's what I said about choosing agencies based on how they present themselves, their online presence, and their communication, and watch out for these, what we often term bottom feeders in the industry. At least when I look at the agencies that, or just the clients, the agencies, and the different types of clients who are posting on Translators Cafe, they seem to be always looking for the cheapest option, and you are on these sites competing with translators from all over the world, so this can sometimes push the rates down. So I think something that Boba didn't mention about the jobs in Smartcat is that Smartcat does also have people who do a first evaluation of the job that's being posted to try and have a first degree of avoiding scammers before they get to you. So that's an advantage also of using that aggregator. And as I mentioned, I'm personally, my profiles out there, I'm presently sites, but I haven't invested my time in them. And you will get, the more time you invest, the return will be the better for you. I don't rely on them on work because I have other channels. And I don't think I've ever successfully bid for a job in them because I'm not willing to lower my prices like that. But you can, if you invest your time, certainly, if you decide you want to try out a membership, these are often things you can do on a trial basis, or even often it's not going to be very expensive to try out for a year and see if a membership is worth it for you, because you can quickly see the difference that it makes. So what I would say is, you want to try out these different sites, experiment, see what's on there, see what other translators are doing, start to build up your reputation, and figure out how much they're charging and if you want to do that. So I'm not going to say to you, yes, you should join X aggregator or X website, or no, you should not, because I couldn't give you my personal experience about what membership brings. But I think it's worth definitely checking them out, starting to build up your profile on one or two, and build up your reputation, and then try out a paying version if you think that it's worth it. Make sure that you actually follow and see what difference it's made to you once you've joined the paying version, to figure out within maybe 6 months or a year if it's worth for you to keep going with the membership. And I think that just simply trying to find clients on multiple freelancing sites at one time can actually be quite overwhelming. So you don't need to be worried about having to join 50 different sites. It's not reasonable, it's not really going to be very useful to you, but you can of course just put your profile out there, as I said, to have different links back to your own website. So a few other points is don't have huge expectations of them. I think that, like I said, you won't just happen magically once you sign up, jobs popping into your inbox all the time. You do need to invest time on doing this, and it may be really a few months before you start getting clients from this approach. So work is going to start pouring in. Don't expect so much from these websites. Make sure that you have reasonable rates that are reasonable for you, for how much you need, and then cast your net wide. So don't rely on only getting jobs from these aggregators who putting your profile out there. You are going to need to combine that with another approach to getting clients, whether you want to target agencies or whether you want to target just direct clients, which we'll look at next time. And finally, just a few more points about approaching aggregators. That is the same as when you're approaching agencies. You can sign up to receive notifications from them, and if you do get a reply when you bid for a job, make sure you always follow through. Don't let work slip through your fingers. And finally, again, only accept work that you feel comfortable doing. I think that's, again, just a really important point. You don't want to start building up a bad reputation for yourself either, or find yourself in quite uncomfortable situations doing jobs that you don't feel you're really up to, or for very low pay. So I think that was it from me. As always, feel free to get in touch. It'd be really interesting to hear from you, from your experiences. That's my email, and I'm on Twitter, and that's my website as well, unadtranslation.com. And if you have had negative experiences, like I said, working with different agencies or job aggregators, it can be useful to share with the community, not just to vent. Sometimes it's good to get it out there and complain, but also because it's important to all of us to share our experiences and to learn from each other, and so that we can all avoid scammers as best we can. So that's it from me, Boba. Do you want to come back on screen?
Let us come back on screen. Yeah, here we are. So, pretty interesting, thank you. I would also add that I personally use job aggregators not to find, like projects, but to find clients, because sometimes the project that they advertise can be with tight deadlines and all this kind of stuff, because why else would people go to job aggregators to post jobs? Just my personal opinion, but you can actually.
I think that's the case for agencies. I think agencies do that when they're in a panic and they're like, oh, we don't have an translator for this. But I think you often have direct clients. I mean, people I get contacted through these aggregators for just I need my CV translated, I need my birth certificate translated. If you're an individual person and you don't really know how to reach out to translators, somewhere like Upwork, which you might have used for other types of freelancing services, it just might be something that you're just going to go to because you know it, and so people can reach out to you with not with urgent jobs, but in terms of like agencies and big companies or anything like that. It's a great way to just get information about who needs translation in general, because they have one job now, they'll probably have one in a few months' time again.
Yeah, I do agree. And also these guys who are just first timers in the translation industry, they are often fooled by the number of low rate offers they get. So I guess if you apply for such jobs, it does make sense to explain to them the value of translation and that it cannot be cheap, and that if they are ordering cheap translation, then they will going to get cheap results. I think so. Let us see if we have some questions. We had some chats in the chat, and I think some questions that Ottavio handled nicely. Thanks, Ottavio, for being our chat moderator here. So Isabel has a popular question here, quite large, but I will read it. How do we do to set up some minimum rate from where to start up? There's a long question, but I guess it sums up to setting some minimum rate for translation services. What do you think? Is it possible? Would you be for it or against it?
So I'm just trying to get the sense of her question from the entire question.
I think all translators should have a same minimum price according to each language pair.
Well, it's simply, I think the market simply doesn't work like that, because we're not all living. Quite simply, we're not all living in the same place. So if you are living in Switzerland and whatever you're charging in Switzerland, if you were charging the same thing living in Serbia, you'd be earning, more than the prime minister. So it's the reality of an online marketplace where it's never really going to happen. And it's also, I know that when I was in the US, when I was in the what it was called, like the translation group, like the local association for translators where I was, you really weren't allowed to say, like, it was illegal to talk about what you were setting as your rate, because it's like a market thing. Like it's when when lots of companies set the same rate, it's actually illegal to do that. So I can't remember the word for that.
Cartel or something like this, I think it's called.
Yeah, so it's not even, I think it's really not feasible for people to do that. Plus your rate is going to depend on a lot of things, and it's going to be also in your specialization on what kind of documents you're translating. Your rate is going to vary according to that. So if you're interested about this question of setting rates, I think it's a good idea to have a look at the webinar we did on that, because my sort of summary, my conclusion to that was that you need to figure out a per word rate that makes sense for you, but not apply it every time. So you can figure out a minimum rate based on your per word rate that's going to be slightly lower, because your per word rate is an average that you want to apply across the board. So you set a minimum rate that's a bit lower than that. And at some point you simply have to say no. You have to learn to say no to a rate that, to 1 cent less than that, because otherwise you will keep being pushed down and down, and it's going to affect you negatively, even just psychologically. You're going to be unhappy with the way things are going. You're going to feel stuck doing jobs for very low pay. So whatever your minimum rate is, it has to be a minimum rate that even if you're doing all of your jobs at that rate, you're getting by, you're paying your rent, you can live a normal life. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
What would your advice be, Boga?
We're always getting back to rates, right? So I think my advice would be getting back to this price fixing question. Not only it's impossible, I don't think it's really helpful or useful, because you should not consider these guys who post ads at ½ cent per word as competitors at all, because first of all, they are not. In Russia there are some kind of railway stations near which a lot of old cars stand, and guys who offer you to use their taxi services, let's call it like this. And there are also private drivers who charge 10 times more, and they do not consider each other as competitors. It's a bit of, I don't know, slippery maybe comparison, but what I mean is that if you do your work good, any number of bottom feeders, they like to call them, but I don't like this name anyway, any number of them will not hurt you. And not in defense of such bottom feeders, I do know people who charge very low and they translate very well. Some of them are retirees and they do not even want to earn that much money on this. For instance, my father, I think he will be glad to translate for any rate if he likes what he translates. He will be willing to translate it for free, but if it pays, that he can do it. The matter is there cannot be too many of bona fide low payers, not low payers, low chargers, and the rest are not competition for you. So I think just by doing your job well, you're gonna be well off. And of course, by doing the right marketing and all these kind of things.
Yeah, it's partly what I said about, having to sort out the junk. You have to just filter. About 90% of the job posts you're going to see on aggregators just aren't worth even, more than 2 seconds of your time, because you are, as I mentioned again, there's translators and translators. Don't be competing. If you want to be living, making a living at being a professional translator, don't be competing with people who are maybe just doing it as like a thing in the weekend to earn an extra 20 euros per month, or who aren't actually serious about that job and willing to do anything at any rate. If you're doing the kind of jobs they're doing, then you're doing jobs that aren't interesting, that aren't going to make you satisfied with your job. You need to look for work that actually interests you and work that you're competent to do, and that's what's going to make you also be happy with your job. I mean, we're freelancers, so we should be doing whatever we can to, be happy in our work. We're the only ones in charge of it. Nobody else is making us do anything. It's all down to us.
Yeah, I do agree totally. I also think that the more you work with job aggregators, the more you have an eye for such kind of things. So if at first you will need to analyze each job offer separately, then after a while you will be just browsing through them and seeing right away if this is some kind of...
There's another question here that we can maybe, Maisel asked, so the importance of uploading finished jobs to your profile to improve your portfolio and expand your references. How do you do that without breaking confidentiality agreements? Well, you need to do that. There's two ways really. You either, obviously you can't just do it with any translation that you've done without consulting with your clients. Often once you've done a translation and it's published, it can be published online. Often if you're translating whatever it is, a website, a document, it can be available online. It's public, it's in the public domain, and all you need to do is contact your client or the agency and ask and just say, is it okay if I just put a link to this? Most of the time when it's in the public domain, the translation, there's no reason for them not to be okay with you simply linking to that work. And the other thing you can do is obviously just upload translations that you have done in your free time that aren't confidential. There aren't things that you've done for clients. You don't have to be, examples of your translations don't have to be paid examples, don't have to be things that you've been paid to do, because maybe when you're starting out, you'll find, I certainly did, that I was doing jobs that weren't necessarily jobs that, the kinds of jobs that I wanted to be doing later on, or that weren't particularly interesting documents. So it was more worth my while to translate something else that I thought was a really interesting article that could show off my skill, and then show that to people. So it's another way of getting around it for sure.
Okay, I think we can then call it a webinar. I think it was great, pretty information intensive for me regarding the agencies. So what else? Take a look at our other webinars on our Crowdcast channel. Take a look at Una's website and what she also has to offer. And what else? Yeah, one thing before we go, it's totally unrelated to the topic, kind of an ad, but we have just today launched a new referral program. And if you have 5 minutes, take a look at it. I just left a link in the chat. So take a look and see if you like it and let me know. That's it, Una. Do you have any parting words to say?
That's it. I've just been looking through the chats. I always get to do this right at the end. But yeah, if you want to keep the chat going in the forum, by all means, feel free to ask questions. The next webinar we want to have is going to be talking about direct clients. So that should be coming along in the next few weeks. And yeah, it's really fun to chat to you all. And please keep coming back. We really enjoy doing these webinars. So I hope that you enjoy listening to them. And see you next time.
Yeah, and if you have any questions left unanswered, do ask them on our forum, which you can find on the discussion tab. So we'll come back to them. That's it. Thanks, Una, for giving this, and see you all next time. Bye-bye. Ta-ta.
Ta-ta.